Hi, good afternoon. Welcome. We're here at STARWEST in sunny Southern California for the Test Automation Conference, and I am joined by Max Saperstone, expert in UI test automation and director of test automation at Coveros. Max, how are you doing?
Doing great. Excited to talk to you. Excited to be at the conference.
So, UI test automation is one of your key areas of focus. I know not the only one, but I know it's really important. Why do you see it as being important for organizations?
Just like with all other types of testing, you need to make sure that you're actually testing at the UI level, and a main part of that is, well, the UI is what the users actually be interacting with. So as much as you want to be doing your unit testing and you want to be doing your integration testing, you really need to make sure that at the end of the day, the user and what they're interacting with is exactly what you have tested, because they don't care about anything else. Ultimately, they care about what they're getting, which is at that UI level.
Selenium though, right? Everybody uses it. It's the number one choice. Why do you see it as the number one choice?
I think there are actually a few different factors. One is, it's open source, it's free, and it's been around for about 15 years now. So, there is a lot of community support that's actually out there. And the other thing is there are a lot of large enterprise-style vendors that use it, like Google, IBM, LinkedIn. All of those use that for pretty much all of their front-end testing, which means it's not just something that can work for a mom-and-pop application. It's actually something that can scale to hundreds of thousands of UI tests and has been shown to be extremely successful.
So what are those kind of problems that people run into?
So there's a whole bunch of problems that people run into, but for the most part, what I usually hear is it's maintenance issues. They have flaky tests. So their tests are working today, they're not working the next day. And a lot of that comes from how you actually design and how you actually build your automated tests. And a lot of it also really just boils down to those building blocks. So when you're testing at the UI, you need to figure out what your elements are that you're going to be interacting with. And if you identify those improperly or those change, everything else is going to fall apart. So it really is kind of those two things of following good design patterns and figuring out what it is that you're interacting with properly.
So those design patterns are critical. Without those, you're going to have things that you're going to have to constly patch and what have you.
Well, exactly. And even if you do have good design patterns, if you're building those on top of faulty low code base, you're still going to run into those same problems. So I can design it all I want, but if I can't figure out what element to click on, doesn't matter how great I've actually designed something.
Got it. So what are your top 3, top 5 tips? How does somebody make sure that they have a Selenium testing practice that's going to work and is maintainable?
The main thing is really make sure that you're using good locators. And so what I mean by that, and I spend a good amount of time actually talking about this, is stop using XPaths. CSS locators can do 99% of what XPaths do. They're faster, they're more readable, browsers even support them, they're part of the DOM, they actually make a lot of sense. So if there's nothing else to take away, stop using XPath, just start using CSS. Another thing is make sure that you're actually following practical design patterns as well. And there are a few of them that you really want to be thinking about. And the first is really like coming up with following this page object model. It's something there's a lot of different information out there, but make sure that you're abstracting away some of the implementation of your tests from your actual tests. Let the tests be more readable, and let all of those fun clicks and types and whatnot be in their own separate objects and handle that. And while you're doing all of that, of course, this brings up a really interesting point, which is, of course, you're writing code. Make sure that you're treating your tests as code. Keep them in source control. Hopefully keep them next to the actual application in the same repository. Make sure that you're running unit tests if you can. Make sure that you're running your code through static analysis, because developers have been doing this for twice the amount of time that people have been doing test automation. We've been developing code for 60 years. We've been doing automated testing for 30. Why not use some of their practices that are kind of tried and true to actually go along with that? The other big thing that I think is really important to notice is there needs to be this mind shift from how you're actually testing things. Because if you think about it, you can't just take your manual test and convert it one-to-one to an automated test. Because as humans, we can be reactive. We can actually make changes based on what we're seeing. And I'm testing things outside of the test plan. Just by the nature of me loading the page, I'm going to be able to report other bugs. Your automated test can't. And so you want to make sure that you're being more specific in what is it that I'm really testing, so that when I say I tested the home page and there's a missing link on there, the manager doesn't come back and kind of say something like, oh, well, actually, I just tested this one section of it. So kind of break your test down into much more smaller, deliberate tests so that you know exactly what it is you're interacting with.
So you actually bring up an interesting thought there. So test automation, automated testing versus manual testing. You really need both, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The big thing that I always push is let your manual testing do a lot of the heavy lifting, and then let your exploratory testing, let your
other way around. Yeah.
So let your automated testing do all the heavy lifting, go through all the different combinations you're looking for, and then let your manual testing take, maybe that's your exploratory testing. You just take one pass through the system and say, look, everything rendered properly. Don't use Selenium to say, are these images the right size? Are all of these elements lined up? Save that for some of your manual testing, because Selenium's really, it can do it, but it really shouldn't be doing that.
So kind of catch the functional regressions through the use of the automation infrastructure, but validate kind of the how it all looks, what the customer experience looks like to engage the brain, so to speak.
Absolutely. I mean, your usability testing shouldn't be done by Selenium, because you need a user in order to actually verify that.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for the time, Max. Thank you very much for joining us for this short video. We'll have some more later this week. And Max, I think we've scheduled to do a webinar as well together. So looking forward to that in the coming months.
Absolutely. It'll be great.
All right, cool.
Great. Thanks
very much, man.